Well, hey, hello, everybody. Welcome to A Life Designed, our team coaching channel. So good to see everybody today.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'd like to introduce each of you kind of in the row of the Brady boxes as I see them. So we'll start with you, Brian, out there in, are you in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I'm in Sri Lanka. I'm ready to have a fun discussion. I like these roundtable discussions, so we can chat about the topic today and see if we can mention some things that are helpful for people to deal with this topic. So
Good. Well, our topic today is world events and how do we cope with them. So there's a lot of big things happening in the world, all of them outside of our control. The only thing we can control really is how we respond to them. And everybody here works with clients directly. So we have to respond ourselves and with our family and friends, and then sometimes help our clients respond to whatever craziness is going on in our clown world. So Maddie, let me say hello to you. And yeah, come off remote. Tell us where you're coming from.
So my name's Matthew Waller. I am in Hitchin, which is in the county of Hertfordshire in the UK, in England. I'm a shamanic teacher, psychic healer, and a few other things as well.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm looking
And extremely opinionated, which is going to help us here.
Oh, yes, good. Well, I'm looking forward to your perspective too. And hello, Zian. Welcome, and tell us where you're at.
Hello, everyone. My name is Zian Harrington. I'm living in somewhere in between Carlsbad and Encinitas, not necessarily in either one, but kind of on the precipice in between. Encinitas, California, and I am a mental wellness coach. My primary focus is solution-focused therapy, and I also specialize in relationships, boundary management, addiction, and trauma integration as well.
Oh, good. So I think people who are having, mental health challenges or, emotional management challenges with all the news, you've heard this before. So great. I'm looking forward to your feedback. And then, hi, Jonathan. Jonathan, it says you're on your iPhone, but your name is not there. So
Namaskaram.
everyone,
I am on my
Jonathan.
iPhone. Yes.
So where are you calling in from today, Jonathan?
I am calling from Santa Rosa. It's California.
Oh,
it's
Northern California.
Yes, United States.
Okay.
For the ones that don't know, because there's billions of people out there that have no idea where Santa Rosa is.
Well, we have Southern California and Northern California in the house. This is nice.
Yes.
And as we go over the weather conditions, you guys get all kinds of natural stuff all the time, so you guys will be used to this. And so you do alchemical hypnosis, Jonathan?
Yes, I am a certified alchemical hypnotherapist. However, I consider myself more of a coach because I don't like to play by the rules of your classic therapist. So I don't have to do that. I'm actually a self-proclaimed higher self guide. That's
excellent.
what I I want to go with in the future, so that I can avoid the norms and like the nonsense and all the stuff that therapists have to sadly go through to help their clients. So yeah, but yes, that's exactly what I do. My actual area of expertise is to help men connect with their masculinity. So that's what I love to do, actually.
Very good. Well, all of us have contributed to alifedesign.org. So we all offer videos and courses, teaching and coaching through our platform, alifedesign.org. And then we do team coaching programs as well. So that's how we all got collected together and the work we do together. In the description box, we'll share how to reach out to anyone individually. If you want to say, tell me more about what you do and I want your help about something. Or you can visit alifedesign.org, join us for a month for free, and then partake of all different kinds of video course programs. I especially, Jonathan, love your magical sleep track. And so all different kinds of things
That's good.
in alivedesign.org. Okay, so now I'm going to debut my 1980s worthy slides, and we're going to present. I did a random walk through the news cycle, and it's not pretty out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, as we look at world events. I don't know if y'all can see this.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So there's just a couple of slides. This will just take 2 minutes or so. And we'll just talk about, hey, how do we, you know, hear all the news? You know, Brian and I did our first YouTube video and told people to switch off the TV. So that's one of the first things you can do is reduce the amount of news you actually consume. But some of it is still going to leak in. And if it does, you know, we'll give you some ideas about how to cope with that. So here's our first slide, and it's recent weather events. So on this very beautiful slide, I'm showing you a picture on the top here of flooding in Dubai that happened in April. In April, they had more rainfall than ever before in all of Dubai. And there might have been some cloud seeding involved, and the government was bragging about how good they were at cloud seeding until there was 5 feet of water in the streets. And then they said, no, 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 we haven't been doing any cloud seeding. We didn't overshoot the mark here. But everyone living in Dubai had to figure out what to do with a flooded car, and they couldn't leave their houses and so on. So another story that I came across here, and this made me think of our California team, is large wildfires. And so there are places, I've listed the link here, that keep track of how many wildfires have happened so far in the year. And so let's see, year to date in 2024, we've had 19,444 wildfires in the US, and we've burned down over 2 million acres. So in case anybody was wondering. The last picture here of destruction is a disaster that happened in Japan on January 6th, that a 7.5 earthquake. They lost 47 structures, 260 people died, and in a couple of minutes, the town looked like that. So it was gone. Those are the kind of weather events we have to deal with. We also have economic events. And so while we're doing our random walk through the news, basically, we have the same 3 stories in different parts of the world in the nice media speak, where things are going poorly, but what they say is the growth outlook is deteriorating. So it's not as good as it could be, is the news headline. And so we look at Latin America and the Caribbean, the growth outlook deteriorating. We look at the EU, and we notice that the winter forecast, you know, last year we grew 0.5%, and this year, you know, we might grow almost a whole percent, maybe. And then in the US, things have taken a downturn. I'm sure it's nobody's fault, and our GDP growth again under 1%. And so I don't know how accurate any of these figures are, but this is the news spin. Finally, the most common and concerning news stories are these geopolitical events. This is a link that keeps track of the top 10 wars. And who knew there was somebody keeping track of the top 10 war list? But there is. And this is an airstrike. And it's the pit that was formed in the city. It looks like more than one after the missiles fell in this city. And uniquely, it didn't tell us where this was. I'm going to guess Sudan, but it might be Northern Africa. So the stories that I list here, I didn't list all top 10, but the ones that people are talking about, certainly in my milieu, or that leak into me on a news feed when I don't accidentally have it shut off, are the Israel-Palestine conflict that began again in October, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There's a brutal Sudanese civil war that I didn't know about. And then, of course, the potential conflict with China and Taiwan. Notably,
I had
on
no
the
Civil War was still going on.
I'm sorry?
I had no idea the Sudanese Civil War was still going on. I thought that was, 10 years ago or so.
No, it started
Oh.
again in April of 2023. See, if you go visit the news, it'll tell you all this stuff. And the thing that was striking about this Sudanese civil war, and then we'll get out of our slides here, was it fired up again in April of 2023. And while the death count, which they keep track of, is roughly 15,000, an unbelievable 8.2 million people have been forcibly relocated.
Oh.
So think of Tokyo being moved out of Tokyo, or, all of Mexico City being moved out of Mexico City. That is what has happened over the last year in Sudan. So this is, lots of bad news. And
Yeah.
if you do a random walk through the news, it's the kind of thing you get. So I'm going to stop the sharing for the screen. But that took about 5 minutes to uncover yesterday in a random walk through the news. So, they say in the newspaper world that if it bleeds, it leads. So they keep track of, well, how many people died and how many buildings fell down, and do we have somebody ready to blame for this, or is it climate change, or is it the politicians? And so off we are to the races about, measuring the misery. And so I wanted to share just a little bit about the thing that I did, actually influenced by Maddie from his shamanic perspective. When some of these conflicts happen around the time of Ukraine was already going on, and then Israel sort of begins again. And I thought, okay, I don't want to shove down these feelings, and I don't want to carry them either. So how can I process them as I go? When these things pop up, how can I process them in real time and let them go? And then call a halt to it, like have a beginning and an end to that process. That seemed to be what worked for me. So I ordered these little red beads from Amazon. And I decided every one of these little red beads was somebody on the red road walk alongside me. And that's kind of shamanically how we talk about our human experience. We're on the red road walk together. And I put it on my ankle because on my wrist it was banging on the table as I typed. And whenever I felt it or noticed it, I said prayers to the people involved in these conflicts and these disasters, the perpetrators, the victims, the innocent bystanders, whoever it is. I sent out prayers and felt compassion for them, and then switched it off. I would notice it again. I would send out prayers again, and that kind of worked the splinter out for me. I did that for 30 days, and then I put it away. So hat tip to Maddie. And the shaman view of the red road walk and my fellow humans walking alongside me, all of it outside of my control, but still impacting me. My responsibility to manage my response to this. So to try to make friends with reality and deal it in real time. And then to say, I'm done. I have now dealt with this. So the only other thing that I do, as clients will talk to me from time to time about either it's a trauma they're reliving, or it's a tragedy that has nothing to do with them, but it's waking them up in the middle of the night, is to say prayers for whoever's involved and trust in the higher power that you believe in, that things are unfolding as they should. You have to trust that things are unfolding as they should. You're not the conductor of this symphony. You're the third violin, and things are unfolding as they should. And then turn the page to gratitude. What can you be grateful for in this life, in this moment, and shift the vibration of your real time, present moment experience, because you have things you can be grateful for, people that you remember that you love and can send love out to, and then turn it off, go back to sleep. So that's my little contribution. Does anybody want to go first about how to handle these world events, how you do it yourself? Maddie.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you want to talk about, them individually or as an eclectic
Oh,
form
no,
of
just
media?
generally, because some things impact people more. Some people are very upset about climate change or natural disasters, others about geopolitics. So it almost doesn't matter the category. Pick a category, we could find three terrible things. So
the first thing to understand is that the news is there purely just to create fear within you. It's not to inform you of exactly what's going on in the world, because everything is masked, some of it is fake. Everything is designed just to create fear within you. And the first thing is, why would you want to consume something like that on a daily basis to begin with? You know, and if you are consuming it, how much of it are you consuming? So if it's something like world politics is keeping you up at night, then there's something extremely wrong in your hologram. You know, you have allowed something in which you absolutely should not allow in. You know, I mean, that's first and foremost.
and you have the power to send it out, to switch it off, right?
You don't have to watch it. You literally don't. There's, you know, there's a big difference between being uninformed and, you know, not giving a shit. They're two completely different things, you know. We know what's going on in the world. I mean, each one of those subjects we can break down, because they're you know, they don't really glue together very well unless you put them on a news like that, and each one is a disastrous thing that's designed to bring you down. And it's not to say that they're not really happening, but you're not getting the full picture there on either of those.
Right.
So do you want to go specifically into one of the subject matters and we can break them down? Or
Well, you know, even if it's something like a natural disaster, you find people now argue about climate change, or they argue about, well, they don't give enough money to the fill in the blank program that would stop the fill in the blank problem. And so you can pick a side of a fight and then engage in the destructive nature of the fight. But I think one of the things that is a proponent of all the people in a life designed is to put yourself in the driver's seat of your life. And so you can choose how much this influences you. You can choose whether or not you're going to be on, I'm on team A, I'm on team B, let's fight.
well, the left wing and the right wing both belong to the same bird.
Right.
Yeah.
So if someone came to you, Maddie, and said, this is waking me up at night and I can't really cope with it, and I feel like I'm a good person because I'm up to date on the news, and I haven't put two and two together that says you're actually causing your own discomfort by even engaging in the news, and your life is happier and better if you switch off the news, how would you speak with someone about that, Maddie?
Well, the first thing is realize that it's designed to harvest your energy. The reality that we live in is a reality that's been designed to harvest energy. The media machine is one of the primary sources of creating that feeding frenzy. So the first thing is reduce the amount of media that you consume. I myself, maybe once every 3 days, I'll just flick through the headlines to have a look to see what's happening, and then I won't delve into it and go any further. Just to keep the periscope up and have a look. If something piques my interest, then I look at it, but I don't become emotionally involved in it. I mean, it's very difficult not to become emotionally involved when you see death and destruction on a mass scale. But that's a whole nother topic. Where it comes to just consuming the media like this and things like climate change, you know, there is a much grander process going on here. We are at a time of great change on the planet, and there is a bigger picture than just the so-called history that we have. Our history is a blip, you know, with concerns to global history since the creation of the Earth. I mean, so let's take climate change or natural disasters, for instance. Each one of these is a natural process. It's a natural part of the Earth. Now, yes, they are in Dubai. They are doing cloud seeding and things like this, but there's also a natural process of redistribution of water. The deserts are coming back in California. There'll be super blooms this year. All of this is about redistribution of water. And from a shamanic perspective, or not so much a shamanic perspective, let's say from a grander history perspective, a lot of the water that's on the Earth, like the glaciers, is fresh water. Now, how do you get fresh water sitting above salt water like that? Now, that's technology. And that water has been programmed. Water is highly programmable. And that water was designed at this time to come down and to bring its programming into the waters of the Earth. It's a part of our natural evolution process. And so the natural redistribution of the water is a real thing. And so where you have these people saying that, well, this is man-made disaster, and that's by design to make you feel that you're responsible for part of the natural evolution and natural processes of the Earth. Yes, some of it will be influenced by man-made scenarios and so forth, but these are natural processes that's going on. You're not to blame. And if, to be honest, you know, something like that keeps you awake at night, then you've gone too far into polarity with that, with respect to that subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
When we go into things like war,
For sure.
you are getting, when you look at the media, depending on which country you are getting a narrative that has been designed, created, and ticked off by the powers that be to say, yes, this is what we want them to be digesting.
Yes.
For instance, this may not go down very well with some people, but let's take Ukraine and Russia, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine is the main country where the Western governments run their human trafficking and their drugs operations.
Yes.
It was a breadbasket
and other kinds of things. Yeah.
It was a breadbasket of Europe, but now it is primarily used for drugs, human trafficking. There are farms there where they raise people just as though they would cattle for human trafficking. And this is where all of the money and that has gone. Now they become so powerful in the Ukraine, the criminal organizations there. And you've got to remember, this is all of the US government, the British government, and all these other European governments. They all have their fingers in this pie. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
but the oligarchs there, they became so powerful that they began to be able to influence the oil companies and the oil production and be able to get into that mainstream, much like the big cartels. When they become so powerful, they're able to go into these big industries. So as soon as they were able to begin to influence the oil industry, Russia, which is the biggest oil power in that area, had to respond. And so what you're seeing there is something very different to our Western media, which wants you to believe that Russia are the bad guys. Now, I'm not saying that they're the good guys. What I'm saying is there's a story here. And the story that's not being told in the Western media.
It might not be democracy versus non-democracy.
Sure.
There's some other power play going on there. And again, having nothing to do with us in our daily lives. You know,
Exactly.
Zero influence over whatever's going on there. And it's unlikely dipping through the news will get to the bottom of anything.
So let's say,
Yeah,
I'll give you an example. If you're flicking through, now you're familiar with the term stepping on another's journey, Myrna, okay? So this, you know, in other words, an act of aggression or violence. And this is not this modern form of, what do they say, offensive, you've offended me.
Right.
Being offended isn't a bad thing, you know? It just shows you where you're at right now. But actual harm is something very different. Now, if you're flicking through Facebook and all of a sudden you come across a video of an animal being severely abused in a cage, and you didn't ask to view that, that has an effect on you. That's a stepping on your journey because you cannot unsee those images.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you're choosing to look at war, you're choosing to look at famine, you're choosing to look at natural disasters, you're choosing to look at all of these things over and over again, you're stepping on your own journey. What you look at looks back at you, and you're imprinting your own self with all of these different forms of situations that are going on around the world. To not view them doesn't mean that you are heartless. It doesn't mean that you don't care, but you are fortunate enough to be in a part of the world where that is not the day-to-day reality for you. You can acknowledge that it's there, but you don't need to feed yourself this destruction day in, day out.
Well, you're engaged in self-care.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian. Do you want to have a comment about this or
Sure. I mean, I agree. I think it's important to not be black-pilled, which means like becoming hopeless from looking at too much just negativity going on in the world. But I'm curious, like Maddie, and then I want to hear from some of the other contributors, like, do you have any, like from a shamanic perspective, do you have any shamanic processes or techniques that you would use, like when someone is getting too hopeless about what's going on in the world or getting too kind of like down about it? Like, would you use like, for example, like a fire ceremony, or would you maybe take someone through like light language or other shamanic style processes? I'm just trying to give our audience a little bit of a feel of maybe certain shamanic techniques or practices they could do with you or learn to do on their own over time that can help with these sorts of things. Maybe, I don't know, communicating with spirit guides or ancestors or any of that kind of tribal shamanic processes you might like to speak on. I don't know if that speaks to you.
Yeah, well, I'll give you an eclectic answer to that. So
Okay, sure.
rather than pick a specific technique, we'll just say that the global media machine, the global narrative, which is what it is, a constructed narrative of distraction and energy harvesting, is the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. So it wants you to be something other than what we are trying to achieve. So the first thing is to realize that that is the opposite.
Yeah.
And then the remedy to it is any self-mastery process, a sustained, prolonged evolutionary process of self-mastery, whatever that looks like to you. So instead of day to day looking at what's wrong with the world, you look within and then you begin to address yourself. So exactly that, the daily art of sacred life, whatever that means, daily meditations, daily rituals, daily ceremonies, whatever you can do to make your life a sacred process where you're going within, healing the self, and that light that you generate will be a light that shines out into that world. But you're not doing it for the world, because that's martyrship. This is about individual awareness and individual evolution of the self. And pick any practices you want and practice them diligently with self-love and with self-care and with discipline, and you will achieve the opposite of what the news and the global media machine is trying to give to you.
So I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So let me hit up Zian or Jonathan here, whoever wants to jump in. So either Zian, like as a mental wellness coach, what type of things could you recommend for people, or what type of stuff could they do if they work with you and they're working on their mental wellness? Like if it's maybe they're down about world events, which may get worse. I mean, inflation could get worse. People can get financially squeezed due to prices going up. That could get worse. I wouldn't be surprised if there's riots in the US after the election, regardless of who wins, whether it's Biden or whether it's Trump. If these types of things are hurting people's mental wellness, do you want to speak to that as to like how you help clients or ways you can help people think about how to sort of live better through these kinds of times that we're in that are trying sometimes? Does anything jump out to you to speak to on that?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And I kind of want to pick back off of what Maddie said, a few minutes ago. This is all designed to harvest your energy and get you and prompt you to unconsciously invest fear in things that you should not be investing fear in, like global warming and all that. And really quickly, I want to comment on that. Maddie said that there's a natural redistribution of water that's coming about. And I agree. Global warming is a natural cycle. It's not some egregious process that's all gonna kill us and be the end of life. It's not part of the apocalypse. It's the natural cycle. It may be happening a little faster at this time in human history, but it is a natural cycle. And to add to that, I've known, and that makes sense to me because I've known for at least a couple of years now that water has a social behavior. It does indeed have a social behavior. It operates according to certain rules, and it is there to, it's part of our natural, the water is there and it's being naturally redistributed, as Maddie said, to aid in our natural evolution. So that addresses that part of world events concerning global warming. However, generally speaking, you have to remember that everything is designed to make you feel like it's a lot worse than it is. All this news, all this horror, this war, this bloodshed, fear porn and all that. But it's not, yes, it is that bad in some parts of the world, but you also have to remember it's been that bad for a long time, and everything is simply coming to the surface. It's not really getting worse. I mean, in a certain way it is. Everything has been that bad for a long time, and it's all just coming to the surface. Now we're just getting a very overwhelming taste of how bad it really is, and because people lack the context to understand that, they think it's a lot worse than it is. And again, it is bad, but it's been this bad for just a long time, and everything is being exposed now. So and again, to piggyback off of what Maddie said, what I do is, me personally, I learn about this. I discover that certain things are happening. I gather some information on it, and then I kind of go back under my rock, so to speak. I focus on myself after. I immerse myself in the sense of tragedy or the shock of it, and then I go back to my own routine. I'm a fire sign, so fire constantly needs to burn through a fuel source in order to survive and keep going. And so I need to constantly learn and absorb information in order to feel like I am sustaining myself. So I as I said, immerse myself in the tragedy or the shock of an event, and then I detach from it, and then I just go back to my own routine, and that's what helps me. And I also have people who I can talk this stuff with. I have my dad, I have a close friend who I can just talk about how I feel, or how stunned I am that this is actually happening, and how people can be so mindless sometimes as to what they believe in, and how gullible they can be. And it's not their fault necessarily, but people definitely do have a responsibility as to what information they take in and how it affects them. So that's what I do. Just figuring out what's happening, becoming aware, and then detaching from it, and then planting my feet back into my own little bubble, and not myself to be so completely affected by what I've discovered that I'm taking my anger and my frustration out, and my sadness, whatever it is that's triggered in me. I'm not taking any of those things out on the people closest to me, and I best to take that out on strangers, because whatever you're carrying around, it's gonna affect how you interact with other people. So you have to be really conscious what you're doing with your reaction to certain things, and how those reactions are being carried around in interactions with people who you aren't close to, and where those interactions are just kind of temporary, and you may or may not see or communicate with these people again.
Yeah. Can I just add on to that?
I agree. I think that's a good. Yes, go ahead. Jump
Add
in,
on to that, because you see, Zian, the thing is, when you look at how people interact with this kind of material on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot of like arguments at work, or somebody has one viewpoint on one, and then someone will argue against it, and then you have this heated debate that carries on. I mean, the first thing is not to get involved in political debate, right? Just don't get involved in it. Don't have an opinion. If you do have an opinion, just keep it to yourself, because you never know, it might change. And the thing is, when you look at things like conspiracy, now, conspiracy, I'm not going to say whether conspiracy theories are true or not. That's not for me to say, because there are so many of them out there. Some are going to be true and some are going to be false. But when you look at your average conspiracy theorist, what you see is somebody who is very extremely opinionated and aggressively pushes that opinion on other people and looks down on the people who don't share that opinion. So that's kind of what we're seeing amongst the general community with the narrative of the news on steroids. It's like an aggravated version. So it just goes to show how the acclamation of information through curiosity, that's creating this charge and polarity, and then the argumentation and the pressing of this on other people. It doesn't matter whether the information you have is correct or false. It's all a part of the same problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And really
that's a great point.
I love
Go ahead.
what you said. What was it that I wanted to say? So, you talked about not having an opinion. I try not to have an opinion, and as I normally reflect on, the more you understand, the less opinions you have. But then you have to realize that even no matter what you understand, some people are still going to see your perspective as an opinion, because they're still full of opinions and they don't understand the same kind of things that you understand. They don't have access to the same kind of information. They don't understand how you arrived at your conclusion, so they might ridicule and condescend you and all sorts of other things. So yes, I agree with what you said, and I love the way you said it.
Absolutely.
Jonathan,
Absolutely.
we haven't heard
Yep.
from you, but I saw you writing things down in a book.
It's yes, my journal. No, I was just writing down some like, key thoughts so that I didn't forget them. But between Matthew and Zian, they have already said pretty much everything I was going to say. So what do I have to say?
Well, I have another take
Well,
on
go
this.
ahead. Go. Yeah.
I have another
Okay.
take on this
Okay.
that you can address. You know, you mentioned conspiracy theories, Maddie, and I've noticed that sometimes people present themselves as part of their identity is their belief system. So I'm a cradle Catholic. That's my identity. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. That's my identity. Manchester United is amazing, or they suck. That's my identity. You know, so I mean, and then there are people who have points of view about the world. If you're not doing something about climate change, you're not a good person. And so you can hear opinions and then you listen for, do I need to co-sign their opinion about something to validate who they are and that they're a good person and to understand their identity? And I did some training for a few years with an organization called Braver Angels. And we would get people that hated Trump and people that voted for Trump together in the same room. You know, no violence took place. But for 3 years, they learned at the end of a 3-hour workshop, they could not only coincide, but learn to like each other. And they were always amazed at the end. Like, I'm talking to a Trump supporter and like they're not even a bad person. Or vice versa, I'm talking to a liberal and they're not even a bad person. But you kind of have this filtering that you build around yourself with your identity. And then you coalesce with other people who have that same filter. And then you find that people require of you that you kind of co-sign the parts of your identity to validate you. So if you were working with someone, you know, Jonathan, who said, well, I can't talk to someone who doesn't believe in fill in the blank. You know, you and I might say that could be a limiting belief, but they say, this is how I understand the world. You know, how do we cooperate with that, Jonathan?
That is a great question.
And you're getting the
because
graduate question, Jonathan, because you're at the end of the line. Here.
I know this feels like a PhD exam.
Your heart is so big, the answer's right there, Jonathan.
Well, that is a great question. The main thing is whatever humans tend to identify with, in my experience, it either makes them bigger when it comes to like how they live their lives, or like they can live in a very petite bubble. So I have, in my experience, I have no problem working with any kind of human. If they identify as a duck, I'll be like, okay, let's find out why you're the ugliest one. But going back to the original point, which was
Coping with world events.
yes, I was looking at a specific note. Yeah, the main thing is what, just like Matthew said and Zian, the main thing is, as a hypnotherapist perspective, the brain cannot differentiate between what is happening and what is being imagined. So it cannot. And as time goes on, studies will come to see how fucked up everybody is because of what they see on the screens, even advertising. When you're walking by, passing, driving on the freeway, and you see something on the side of the road that it just catches your, like, even if it's just the side of your eye, but you already saw it, you have no idea that it's already imprinted. That it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
As we know it. Now it is there, but it seems like nobody like cares because it's so normal. It's normalized, right? I mean, so yes, first things first. Like again, like Matthew, Brian, and Cian have said, just keep the intake of information to the minimum, because you do not know how much you can take. Like even horror movies, I learned this the
Yeah.
hard way. I had to learn this the hard way. Okay, you watch a horror movie, somebody's cutting somebody's leg with a chainsaw, and coming from like Texas, you know, the movie. I'm pretty sure 90% of Americans have seen that movie. You see that, you're like, oh, haha, his leg got caught by a chainsaw. Well, yeah, surprise, surprise. Your brain doesn't know that it's a movie, and now you're fucking traumatized for until you actually process that information. So you have no idea what you're like. Humans have no idea what they're dealing with in the first place. That's a very important. It's important that they at least they understand that whatever they watch, it's as if they have to take it as like it actually happened, and it's going to have consequences. So yes, less is more. I will recommend. Actually, I do not watch news because I cannot help anybody that it's in, like somebody that it's on fucking Africa. How am I going to help them?
Yeah.
So to the point back, I make a note back up to the orchestra. If I am a fucking violin player, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even the master of the orchestra, the director. And then somebody's dying in Africa. Why do I have to know what's happening in Africa? I have to know what's happening within myself first. And then I can become as competent as I can possibly can, so that I can become at least the master or the director of this orchestra. Let's say, for example, United States. Okay, you become the master or the director of United States. Then you can fucking help Africa. But first things first, you have to help yourself and become as competent as you possibly can. You will be wasting. I mean, you can. I will not recommend it, but you can. But you will be wasting a lot of energy trying to like go on the streets with like help Ukraine. Like that's nonsense. You should be on the gym or like reading a book and getting a second job, something to put yourself in a position so that at some point when you're competent enough, humans look at you and you're like, oh, this human can help this group of humans. So I'm all about accountability, even with myself, my family members, my problems, which are my friends. So yeah, I will recommend 1000% that. And if a client comes to me, for example, with inflation, I leave that stuff actually, because I'm not earning that much right now. So there's as a hypnotherapist, if someone comes to me and is like, Jonathan, this is too expensive. How am I going to pay for this? I go to Whole Foods and I spend $100 in 3 items. I'm like, yeah, you know, it sucks. It's horrible. But I can work with them when it comes to the perspective that they have, the origin or the paradigm when it comes to abundance and money. Like, where do you learn that 10 was less or much? Like, for some humans that I have met personally, $1 million doesn't change their day. It's like, for them, it's like, oh, 1 million more, 1 million less. Who gives a fuck? They don't care. I have met humans and I have been in situations where $10 can change my day. So when do we learn this? That this is a lot and this is too little. So based on my experience, first things that I do with myself and the humans that I have helped is to go back to the origins. Like first things, if it comes down to money, because it's important, right? I will ask them, what are 3 things that comes to your mind when you think about money? And they will say, well, money is the root of all evil. I'm like, okay, that's a fucked up one, but it's good. We write it down because it's there. It's in the back in their minds, you know, like money it's dirty. I'm like, oh, tell that to the strippers. They
Yeah.
swim on it. They don't think it's dirty.
Money can be a force of good.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I'm talking about like the background that they have. It's like when you put them in hypnosis, they come up with these ideas that are, you have to clean them first. After you get rid of those, you can implant the new paradigm, which is money is beautiful, money can be useful, money is a tool, money is clean, money is great, money is pretty. So it just depends. So that is my perspective when it comes to helping someone that is not in abundance.
But this brings us around again to the same topic, which is that it comes down to the responsibility of the self. Because even when you look at something like money, money absolutely is the cause of slavery. And I don't mean slavery as in taking a person and making them work against their will. What I mean is the inability to have a flourishing society, a global society that flourishes where, we benefit all equally from the bounty of this beautiful planet. Money is what stops us from that. But yet money is also a tool of growth. Money can be used in various different ways.
Exchange of energy between people.
Exactly. And it all comes down to, personally, I like to say that there is only one real enemy. And this is what the news and these kind of events, what they do is they're always, like Myrna said at the beginning there, who is the victor, who is the victim, who's the one to blame. It's all about shame, blame, guilt, and all of these other different perceptions that pervert our daily life. There is only one enemy, and that is the unhealed aspects of our own self.
Yes.
These are the parts of us that have a perspective of the world that is perverted. And that doesn't matter whether the arguments for your own ego are correct or not. The fact is that argument is being used against you by yourself.
You're worse off for having it. Let's just look at, does it serve you or does it not serve you? And then take out the blame and where it came from. It's serving you or not serving you. And so they have that old saying about, when the plane is falling from the sky, you put your own oxygen mask on first. And with the flow of oxygen can now help other people. But if you're starved of oxygen, you can't help other people also starved of oxygen. And so you talked about the sacred daily life. We've talked about how being responsible for our own intake of news, our own response to world events is our job, our responsibility. And if we're putting on the oxygen mask of a daily practice of some kind, of engaging in gratitude, of saying, okay, I'm just going to process this until I know I've released it, and then I'm going to keep going. You don't have to feel bad that it impacted you or like you're a good person because it impacted you. You just have to release its impact.
That's right.
So, Brian, do you
want I'd like to address something real briefly that Zian said, because I think it's important in understanding why we're in this situation that we're in with the global media machine as it is. And Zian said that, things have always been like this and they maybe feel like they're getting worse. The part of this situation we're in now that is worse is the fact that we have lost our teachers and historians. We've lost our history. And we have lost the natural connection to the earth that was given to us through the ancestral connection and through the teachers, the oral historians that would have passed down the history to and all of these different practices throughout time. And it's been replaced by the media. So all of us in the West now, we don't have those ancestral teachers. We don't have the grandmother circles, the grandfather circles, and all of those indigenous communities that would have been passing down the wisdom of the ages. Now we have the media machine, which has replaced that for us. So our sense of identity, our sense of spiritual knowledge comes from the corrupt media system, which is why we're in this situation.
Well, Brian, Brian, I want to invite you to talk to people about how you might work with them with the Sedona method or manifestation techniques to say, okay, I've identified this problem in my world and I want to release it, or I want circumstances to be changed for me. How would you talk with someone who's like, okay, I've had enough, I need a solution of some kind?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me address Maddie's point there real quick, which I think is good. So yeah, sometimes I totally agree. And sometimes I argue that I think tribal people who tended to be shamanic, most tribes were shamanic, I sometimes I argue they were far more advanced than us, emotionally and spiritually. It's just that we're more advanced technologically, so we tend to look down on them as primitive. But actually, in many ways, they were way beyond us. Like in terms of bonding within the community, they had way stronger ties. A lot of that stuff comes from things I'm sure you're familiar with, Maddie, and maybe other people, in the group here are, like drum circles, dancing around fires, like doing ayahuasca ceremonies, like all these kind of things that tribes did created a much deeper bonding. So in many ways, they were way more advanced than us. We're actually like primitive now in a lot of ways compared to the way they were at socially, emotionally, maybe spiritually, maybe relationally, like in terms of relationships. But speaking to what you said, Mom, um, yeah, so I teach people Sedona method, which is a way to go through a series of questions that helps you very quickly like release emotions that you're just stuck on. So if you're just like fixated on certain emotions or you're just like ruminating and you're stuck in like a negative loop, it's a really quick way to turn your emotions around. So it's a very helpful tool. So I will take people through those sessions if they want a coaching session with me, but I also teach people how to do it on their own. So they can just use this process anytime. That's what I love about it. You can do it for yourself out loud verbally, or you can do it in your head silently, like anytime throughout the day. And you can create really big emotional shifts really fast. But also speaking to the point you mentioned about manifestation, that's another really good point. And manifestation does work. I mean, I've proven it in my own life, so have millions of other people. We can talk about that more as we go through these roundtable discussions, but by shifting what you focus on, by holding on to the feeling of the life that you want to have, you can start to attract more of those types of situations and your life will start to shift. So that's another strategy you can use to make your life better or to sort of get yourself out of these trying times that maybe your society or your world is in. And it does work to a certain extent. I'm not going to say it's guaranteed foolproof or you get exactly what you want every time or you can manifest absolutely anything no matter how crazy it is. But many people have manifested many things. And if you look into these stories, I've done this in my own life too. I've had people come up to me out of nowhere and offer me jobs when I was doing job manifestations. That's happened to me multiple times. People I didn't even know. I've had strangers come up to me and offer me jobs. So I do know this kind of stuff works. And I've also manifested other stuff too. And I share some of those stories on some of the ALD videos. So that's another technique you can use, and we'll go deeper into that. I think it's an important tool to learn and to just experiment with it. Try it out. I always recommend that people just be open-minded, try things out, experiment, because you never know what's going to work for you. Sometimes things work amazingly well and you never would have expected it. So
well, if you look at people who watch the news and who look at all of that stuff on a day-to-day basis and their lives are suffering because of it, well, that's direct manifestation. So that's exactly as what you were just describing. It's not a negative version of it. It's actually working for them, but it's because that's what they've decided to focus on, and that's become their reality. And now you're lying awake at night, suffering.
One of the great things about getting this collection of amazing people like you together at A Life Designed is when you hear a person say, everywhere I turn is death and destruction, or effects of climate change, or a poor economy, fill in the blank. What we hear as coaches is that's the filter through which you're viewing the world. And it's probably your filter because you keep feeding it more of that and it keeps giving you more of that back. So we hear the first place to start is strip that filter clean. Let's wash down the windows because your windows are a little smudgy with disaster and with climate change and economic difficulty. We hear, oh, okay, that's your current setup, what you're inviting in, and then you see more of that out this way. The client who's talking with you isn't like, I must be carrying around of death and destruction and economic problems because the whole world looks like this. And we know, oh, okay, we know right where to start. And so, you know, it's not wrong that that's happening for you, but if it is happening to you, there is a way out. You know, there's a way to make the shift so that your life is vibrant, your life is flourishing, your life is abundant, your life is filled with love and peace. All of that is possible to you immediately now, but we might need to change up the filters a little bit.
Diagnose it.
So many
Straight up
different ways
diagnose it.
Yeah.
You know, and we can
approach
diagnose that,
Yeah.
Myrna, right now. What are those programs that are making you view the world with those filters?
Yes.
That is martyrship and zealotry.
Yeah.
Yes. And what do
Yeah.
we do to wash them clean?
Yeah.
Is the shamanic way to do it? Is the hypnotic way to do it? Is the neuro, you know, distinctive psychology way to do it? Let's dial in your keys for you to do it, but they can be washed clean. You can be happier and more peaceful every day. And, you know, as we look at potential new events that are coming our way that might seem worse than better, we look for those who keep their head when all the rest are losing theirs. And so we are those that keep their head, and we can show you how to keep yours. And then your loved ones and your neighbors and your friends, if they're not as prepared for what happens, you can put your oxygen mask on and be ready to help, should help be needed. But you'll need to do your own cleaning first. So does anybody have any
Yes.
final thoughts before we go to our funny session about the mountains arguing?
I was going to say, just for the windshield metaphor or analogy or whatever it's called, some humans, they don't need their windshield clean. They have it, actually, it's already been, like, it's broken, so
Oh.
they have to fucking replace it. They don't need it. They cannot clean it. Even if they want to, it's not going to
It's
work.
not the
They
car
have
wash
to.
that's the solution.
No,
It's the auto
they
repair
have to
shop.
yes, they have to replace the windshield.
Mhm.
Most of them, I would say 90%.
Oh, very good, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Zian, you have a final thought?
I do. I wanted to add on to what John said about the brain. So there's a part of your brain that reacts to situations and experiences before you actually physically experience them.
Oh,
And that adds pertinence to what Jonathan said about how the brain cannot distinguish the difference between what it's actually experiencing and what it's imagining.
mhm.
So there's your whether or not you know it, there's a part of your brain that is projecting its own trauma and beliefs into a situation before you've experienced it, and then when you do experience it, that response was pre-programmed into you.
Mhm.
Nothing you think or react to is outside of you. It was already there before you even encountered the situation.
Mhm. And the good news is we can help you change your programming so that your world, your daily experience can change. Okay, I want to go back to the presentation and share this funny thing. And I want to, I think we'll giggle at it. And then I want Manny to explain why the mountains are arguing. So hang on a second. I'll go back to share screen. Here we go. Share. Okay. So this is about, I don't know if you can see it. Okay. Can you guys see what this is?
Yeah.
Okay, this is about Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens in the Cascade Mountain chain here in the northern part of the United States. So in this picture on the right, there's a man standing on top of what's left of the top of Mount St. Helens 44 years ago. If we look to the lower left picture, it blew its top. 44 years ago, it exploded because it's not just a mountain, it's also a volcano. And from this perspective on the top right, man is looking off in the distance at Mount Rainier, who has not blown its top in more than 100,000 years. Mount Rainier has got its act together. Mount St. Helens is a little more volatile. So we're going to look at how they're arguing. And I'm going to go to this. I don't know if you guys can see this. And the mountains are arguing the way we argue today, which is over Twitter. So it turns out that Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens have Twitter accounts. And what it is it's the land management or the park management. And they normally use Twitter to say things like this part of the park is closed today, or we have wildfire concerns about this part of the park today. And then sometimes they just get into an argument. So Mount St. Helens has had, a number of small grumbling earthquakes over the last month or so. And this is the picture of the catastrophic, explosion 44 years ago. And since February of this year, there have been 350 earthquakes. And so most of them have been 1 magnitude or less. So they're grumbles really more than anything else. But the official Mount St. Helens account has wasted no time in chatting about, I'm getting ready to blow. So Mount St. Helens says, I'm ready to blow harder than your mom. So if your mom has ever blown her top at you, Mount St. Helens blew the top off 44 years ago. And this is a curated feed. Now Twitchy is a curated feed of funny things found on the internet. Many of them are weird and inappropriate, but funny. So Mount St. Helens says, I'm topless and ready to blow. So you can see how
That's funny.
the crater was done here because it blew off 44 years ago. She blew her top. And so Mount St. Helens is showing all the seismic activity, hundreds of grumbling earthquakes, and says, I'm back, bitches. Look at all my seismic activity. Well,
Okay.
then they say,
Okay.
Mount St. Helens is so back, so back. Believe in yourself like a volcano who still has it after all these years.
Nice.
The National Park Service brought in the snark in all these Park Service Twitter accounts. And one of the ways it did it was last year it said, believe in yourself like visitors who believe they can pet a bison. So, a warning, we don't pet the bison. This isn't, a live zoo. Okay, so Mount St. Helens has healthy self-esteem, and they did not waste throwing any shade at Mount Rainier. So here's Mount St. Helens, who blew her top 44 years ago, and she says to Mount Rainier in the distance, your move, Mount Rainier. You won't. I think we know there might be college interns running these accounts now.
Yeah.
Mount Rainier shoots back. Look me in the eye and say that, horseshoe face. So Mount Rainier is not just going to sit there and take it. Look me in the eye, horseshoe face. And so finally, Mount St. Helens says, I hear there's a pill for erectile dysfunction. So, so I'll stop sharing. But I don't know, Maddie, the mountains are arguing. They're having a little beef over Twitter.
Yeah.
But sometimes, when the news is crazy, we go to a funny news site that curates goofy comments on the internet, and we say, okay, we'll just take the piss out of this, as you might say, Maddie, and we'll just relax and laugh about the mountains arguing with each other. But my final thought, and then I'll leave it to you if you want to say more, is that as this tension builds up in you, don't be like Mount St. Helens and blow your top. Be more like Mount Rainier. Over 100,000 years, release the effects a little at a time as they come through to you, and be a majestic mountain 100,000 years later, rather than Mount St. Helens, who had to blow her top because she just couldn't cope anymore. So the lesson of our arguing mountains. Okay. Are they mountains that are arguing, or dragons, Maddie?
Well, what you're seeing there is karmic resolution. So it's a process of ancient karma that's being resolved there through those interactions. That's the watered down version of what's going on. But then, we are in a point where the sun, we've entered into a solar maximum 7 years earlier than what we should have done. So, it should be 7 years until the sun is responding the way it is right now. And that's what's causing a lot of these. But also what you're seeing there is the weakest part of the fault line relieving all of the pressure. So that is a metaphor for what we've just been talking about this whole time. Yeah. So, if you if you are weakened by the global media, if you are weakened by the information that's coming down to you, then you are more susceptible to the fault line and you will blow your top, rather than the other mountain that's sat there solid and secure,
Mount
knowing it has
Rainier.
under it.
I'll show you how
Exactly.
it's done for 100,000 years, people.
That's very funny.
Oh, very good. Okay. Any final thoughts? It was so
Cool.
fun to have our first roundtable.
Yeah, I just want to say I enjoyed everyone's contributions. Everyone made a lot of really great points. And yeah, we just want to give people who watch these videos and people who join ALD a chance at multidimensional healing through many different modalities and multidimensional learning and multidimensional, personal growth and ways they can benefit themselves. So it's cool to be able to hear from all these different perspectives. And yeah, I really enjoyed everyone's contributions. So look forward to doing more of these in the future.
In the comments below, we'll list how to get a hold of everybody.
Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say something first, actually, before we go.
Sure.
If anybody's listening to this and you are one of these people that we've been discussing here who is deeply affected by these things, you may be offended by what we've said here today, and you may not, or you may say, well, how am I just able to just switch this off and change my perspective? But it's not that simple. And what we want to present to you guys is that what we develop over time and over our lifetimes are filters, and this comes from our central nervous system. And we develop what we call our personality. And these are like programs within a computer. And you can't just unthink these. You can't just switch them off in an instant. Things like martyrship and zealotry, and they sound like big, dirty words, but they will explain to you why you're feeling the emotions that you're feeling. All of these processes and many others that we'll discuss on the many shows that we're going to do after this one, it comes down to a long journey. And this doesn't mean decades and decades and decades, but the journey never ends once it begins. And that's the truth of it. But it's not something we just do like this. And so it is about going into the self, finding whatever tools, tips and techniques work for you, and slowly, piece by piece, dismantling these perspectives that have got you into the position that you're in. So we're not bad-mouthing you guys at all. Please don't misconstrue what we've been saying here for malice. It's certainly not like that. It's just that us guys here on this panel, we have developed our perspective enough to be able to step outside of this narrative and see it from the outside looking in. And that's what we're inviting you to do with our assistance.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Well, we've all been there. We all started our journeys at some point, and our work all individually continues. So as you say, the journey's never over. But it's really delightful to hear the different perspectives.
I just wanted to say, I like what Jonathan, or
Yes.
I like what Maddie had to say just now about we're not bad mouthing anyone. It's nobody's fault that that you think the way that you do. However, you do have a responsibility. You are accountable for what you think and how it affects you.
Yes.
So that's another part of it, where we emphasize accountability for what we do, what we think, and how we use our information. And I also enjoyed this. This was very informative. I liked hearing everybody else's perspective. Jonathan, Brian, Maddie, Myrna. This is cool. I look forward to doing this many times over.
Great, good. Jonathan, do you have a final thought?
Sounds great.
I am grateful for this, and I am actually looking forward for humans in America, for males. I hope this impacts some males out here, because Brian is far away. I'm looking forward for males in America to stop being spineless cunts and actually bring their sense of accountability and help.
Love it, man.
Well, yeah, I'm grateful that we've got this collection going together. Thanks for the laughs at the end there. If you want to reach out to everybody individually, look below, and thank you for joining us. Visit alifedesign.org. The first month is free. You can poke around and look at our different videos and trainings too. And thanks again, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Love it. See you guys.